everyone, it's Parisha from The Artistic Scroll, and in today's Procreate tutorial, we're bringing a little bit of magic to a box of chocolates. This heart-shaped box is overflowing with a delicious variety of treats, each one with its own unique flavor, color, and texture. We'll be creating realistic highlights and shadows to make these chocolates look irresistibly rich, adding tasty toppings, and crafting a beautifully textured gift box with a soft satin ribbon. You'll also learn how to align Procreate's native stamp textures to the box shapes, making this a great lesson in both technique and creativity. And of course, we'll finish it off with a dreamy, glowing vibe to tie everything together into a truly enchanting piece. To follow along, you'll need your iPad, Apple Pencil, and the Procreate app. Don't forget to download the free sketch file and color palette for the illustration from the Artistic Archive. It's completely free to sign up for the archive, and you'll get access to all the sketch files and palettes for all of my tutorials too. So once you're ready with the files, let's dive right in and bring this magical chocolate box to life. Welcome guys, so this is what your canvas will look like once you download it from the Artistic Archive. And as you can see, we've already got the sketch here on layer 1. So what we're going to do now is just rename this as sketch. And then we can change the blend mode to multiply by tapping the N here. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer just to about 20% or so. Enough so that I can see it, but it's not interfering with my illustration afterwards. Alright, so we need a color palette now, so we're going to tap on this green dot here, or whatever color dot you've got as the active color. And you'd have downloaded your color palette as well. It's called the chocolate box dot swatches, I think. And yeah, we just need to download it, and then you can just tap on these three dots, set it as default, move your color palette menu to the left. So you've got this mini color palette menu all ready to go. So we're going to create a new layer by tapping this plus sign, move this layer below the sketch layer, and then we're going to get started. So firstly, we need to select our brush in the brush library. So tap on inking, and we're going to select the technical pen brush. Alright, so for our brush, we are going to be using, for our color, we're going to be using this pink color in the first row. So the second swatch there. And we'll get started with the box here. Okay, so one thing that we need to do about the box is to make sure that we are able to differentiate the front of the box here from the back. So we're going to do this in two different layers, all right? So for the first one, we're just going to go ahead and maybe you can keep your brush size to about 6 to 7%, just enough that you can get a thick, steady line. And then you can go ahead and just outline this. And we only need to go up till this first section here. Anything behind this elliptical chocolate is going to be in the back section. All right, so just rotate in my canvas because we're going to be outlining this right till the end. So this might take a few steps, a few tries to get a solid line, and that's fine. And then also the lower edge. Go ahead and fill it now. And we've got the front of our box ready now. Great. Next, we're going to just reduce this one's opacity, and we're going to create a new layer. Move this layer below the front layer, and we're going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the box. So because this layer is behind the front layer, you can go ahead and totally draw beyond the margins into the front layer as well, because that's not going to be visible as this layer is behind the front box. But make sure that you complete your shape so that when you fill it, you won't have any problems. Yeah, that's better. Okay, go ahead and fill it. Looks great. And now I'm just going to bring back the opacity of our front layer back to 100%, and you can see we've got our box ready. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and paint in the slots here. Now you can see it's a very complex system that that basically I've sketched here for you guys. A little bit of a challenge, but trust me, it's going to be fun. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new layer above this back box layer. Okay, so the heart shape that you see here, that's the back box. We're going to create a new layer above that so that it's behind the front one but above the back. Okay, so we're going to use this what color should we call this? This is a purple mauve kind of a color. So we're going to select this, the third swatch in the first row, and the first thing that I want you guys to do is to just mark out the areas that are marking out the ground basically, or the base, from where you can see the actual base of the entire box, which is supposed to be pink. But like for example, you can see that the base is pink here, and the slots themselves are entirely this beautiful purple mauve color. So we're just going to mark out these areas, and because the chocolates are going to be above the slots as well, it doesn't really matter if if this slot section is going above them or not. It's fine. And as you can see, even the slightest bit of a base that is visible is going to create a really nice effect. So that's why I've included this variation and not just had a complete slot kind of an area there where it's all just one color. It just helps to bring a little bit more realistic effects in this. Okay, and then I've got one last one here. And as you can see, it's going all the way up to this section. And if at any point you feel it's getting a bit too confusing, you can bring back your sketch layer to 100% opacity and have a look and see exactly what I mean, where I'm placing in all of these details. Okay, so I think I've got all of them. I'm just going to now create the outline. And then wherever you've got these overlapping vertical slots, you can go ahead and paint those edges in there too. Trust me, this is the most complicated part of this entire illustration. Just to figure out where exactly are we placing all of our flat colors. So once you sort this out, you're good to go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just create these so you're able to understand exactly what I mean by all of these slots. Make sure you close your shapes. And this one's ready, so I'm going to fill that in. Okay? Okay, now let's just complete our shape. And then there's this vertical edge that's jutting out here as well, so I'm going to draw that in too. And then complete my shape here as well. And now we'll fill this in. Now you can see that you can actually, once the chocolates are drawn in, you'll be able to see that we've got spaces of the base visible there. That's exactly what we wanted. All right, great. So next we're going to go ahead and paint in this darker lid that we have of this box. So you can see that the lid is actually behind this back box layer, so we're going to create it right below it. Okay, and for this lid we're going to use the first color in the second row, this darker pink color, and let's go ahead and just outline it and then fill it in. And remember to close your shape, fill it in. Okay, so that's looking great. Next, we're going to create a new layer above this lid layer for our ribbon cross that we've got and the bow. So we'll start off with the cross first because the bow will come above that. And for the cross, we're going to take this champagne kind of a color, beautiful color, and we'll paint this ribbon cross. Now don't extend too far beyond the box itself because the ribbon is meant to be thin but still thick enough to be considered a separate object, but not too thick, okay? So just going a little beyond the margin of the box itself, and that's it. Alright, close your shape, and let's go ahead and fill it. Okay, looking good. I'm going to reduce the sponge opacity now so I can see the bow clearly on top of it. We're going to create a new layer above the cross layer, and we're going to paint in the flat colors for our bow. There you go. So that's the bow and it's ready. I'm going to bring back the opacity of the cross now. And that's looking great. Alright, so for the next step we're going to paint in this label here. And to do that, create a new layer above the bow layer. And we're going to select this blush beige kind of a color. So it's a kind of like a very light pale pinkish beige. I'm just going to paint in this label. And that looks good. Okay, create a new layer now above this label layer. And we're going to go back to our box pink color in the first row, so the second swatch in the first row. And we're just going to paint in this string. So a little knot there. And it goes near the bow. It's meant to be under. Oh, okay, so that's erased. Here we go. And I'm just going to erase it so it looks like it's under the bow. Alright, so that's looking great. We can move on now to the chocolates. Okay, finally it's time for the chocolates. So we're going to paint our chocolates in 2 layers as well. There will be some that are in the back and some that are in the front. Okay, so let's start off with the back layer first. We're going to create a new layer right below the sketch layer. So that's right above our box, basically, even the front one. And you can see that we've got all of our chocolate colors in the third row of the color palette. Feel free to mix around and use whichever color you want for the chocolates, to be honest, or you can follow along with which ones I'm using. It's completely alright. You can bring along a lot of variations here and have fun with it. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the darkest brown color, the first color in the third row. And I'm just going to paint this elliptical chocolate first. And fill that in. It's looking good. Okay, maybe I can use the same color for this hexagonal. Is it a hexagon? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it is. I can't believe I had to count that. It is a hexagonal one, isn't it? Okay, so I'm gonna paint this one. This beautiful dark brown color too. And I've just noticed a little dot here that I wanted to erase. Okay, so that's great. And then I think I will also make this this little chocolate here the same color. Okay, so that's looking great. Next, I think I will move on to the hearts now in this one. So for the hearts one, I'm going to use this white chocolate kind of a color. And once again, you don't have to use the same colors as I am. Absolutely okay to use whichever ones you want. If you want to make your chocolates green, go ahead, do that too. Or any that you don't have in this color palette, that's okay too. It's just time to have some fun with these chocolates. Fill that in. And then there's another heart here, so I'm going to make that into white chocolate too. Okay, that's great. Next, I think I will move on to these colors now. So I'll take the second brown in the third row, and maybe I'll get started on these long ones. I don't know which ones these are, but I think we can safely say there's something wafer related. Or it could be a totally different one. It's fun to imagine their flavors. Okay, so that's great. And then I'm going to use the third brown in the third row to paint in the remaining ones. Okay, and then these as well. So maybe these are more like milk chocolate fingers. The other ones were darker chocolate fingers. Okay, looking good already. Okay, and then I think we can also make this spherical chocolate as well, and I'm going to use this second brown for it. Get some variation in colors. Make it a perfect circle with the quick shape. And yeah, maybe I will also make this triangular chocolate the same brown. Looking good. Okay, so there's only one left here, and I think I will make this red. Give it a bit of a different shade. Great. Oh, there's this one here as well. Okay, so we can probably use the lightest brown color, so the third brown color in the third row for this one, and I'll make the top white chocolate. And it could totally be like maybe it's a nut that is stuck on the chocolate, like a cashew nut. Fill it in. Lovely. And then we're going to use the white chocolate color. Okay, so that's great. We've got all of these now. Next, we're just going to paint in all of the toppings on these chocolates, okay? We're going to do this on a new layer instead of making it a clipping mask, because if it's a clipping mask, it's going to be stuck only in the area of the thing that is already painted, so the base of the chocolate. But as you can see, we're trying to get a bit more of a 3D effect. So make it look like the icing or whatever this liquid chocolate, which is now solidified in a way, it's it's got a bit of a 3D structure here, so it's protruding beyond the chocolate itself. That's what's happened here. So that's why we've created this new layer, and we're just going to start off with drawing these. So maybe I can increase my brush size to around 12%, and that's looking good. And I can just draw this. So something like that. So you can get a feel, if I turn off my sketch layer, that it's definitely got a form, a 3D form. The only thing to do in this would be to make sure that the ends are touching the base. Okay, so they're not like hanging up outside without really being a part of the base of the chocolate, because that's what's going to give it the effect that it's actually stuck on the chocolate itself. Okay, let's bring back our sketch layer and we can keep working. So yeah, once again, have fun with whichever type of icing color or sprinkle color or topping color you want to include in yours. Yeah, I'll see you once it's all done. And I think I will use the darkest brown color for these milk chocolate fingers. Looking good. I think we can also make these on the heart. I'm going to increase the brush size to about 5%. And you can see what I mean. I'm going beyond the margin and then curving inside like that. That's giving it the effect that it's actually curled over the chocolate. Okay, I'm going to reduce the opacity of the chocolate layer slightly so I can see this one. It's a bit too dark for me to see the sketch through. So I'm going to use the green color for this one's toppings. As well as this dark brown one as well. I'm going to use the milk chocolate color, so that's the third brown in the third row. Okay, that's great. Can bring this opacity back up now and have a look. Yes, that's looking great. Okay, and maybe for this one I can just have some little spots of this lighter brown color. Maybe they're just like sprinkles of some light dusting. And we can do the same for the red one as well, with the darkest brown color. Alright, so that's great. And then for this triangular one, we can use the third brown color again. That's great. And for this brown, this spherical one, we can use the white chocolate color for this. Now this one's a little complicated, but honestly just squiggle around with this. There's really no rules to this one. You can just imagine somebody's gone a little crazy with their icing pen or whatever. Well, that would be me, isn't it? Because I designed this. Yeah, I thought this would be an interesting one. But honestly, if you feel like it's too complicated, just draw a simple one for yourself. There's really no need to trouble yourself. This one's for fun. This whole illustration's for fun. Okay, so that's looking great. Have we got all of our toppings then? Seems like we have. Okay, so you see the hearts and the sprinkles on this one. That's going to be on a separate layer, but we don't want to make too many layers here, so what I'm going to do is just include it with the front chocolate toppings layer. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new layer on top of our back chocolate toppings layer, and we're going to get started with these. I think there are just 4 left now, so maybe this square one can be the second brown color in the third row, so the medium brown. Alright, and then we can use the white chocolate color for this rectangular one. Okay, and I think we can also go ahead and just paint in the inner one here as well, and I think I'll keep that as the darkest brown color, so a dark chocolate color. Yeah, so that's one thing though, because we're drawing on the same layer. If we try and fill it, the entire white chocolate will also be filled in with the same colors. So you could totally do it as a clipping mask as well on a separate layer. But if you don't want to waste layers, you can just go ahead and fill it in like any other normal traditional kind of art. This is what you would do, isn't it? Have everything on one layer. But we'll try and avoid that as much as possible. Right now I think this is more than enough. We're good to go with that. Okay, and I think you can also draw, paint in this second rectangular one also as this darkest brown color. Alright, and then for this last one, we can go ahead and use the red color. It's going to give us a nice splash of color in this illustration. Okay, and that's looking lovely. Okay, now it's time for the sprinkles or the toppings. So create a new layer above our front chocolates layer, and we're going to go ahead and paint in the sprinkles or chocolate toppings or whatever. So I'm going to paint in this one the square chocolate topping as the milk chocolate color. Alright, and as for this one, we're going to make it this milk chocolate color, which will be this third brown color in the third row. So just make sure that you have a rounded end when you're using the technical pen brush. It can lead to a pointed end. We don't want a pointed ends, we just want proper round ends there. Okay, and even for this other dark chocolate one, we are going to have the same milk chocolate color. Looking good. I'm gonna bring back the opacity to maximum. And for the final one, we have this red chocolate. I'm going to again use the darkest brown color to go ahead and paint in these little dots. Okay, so that's looking great. And we also have these little sprinkles from the back chocolates here as well. So we can make the hearts the red color. So let's go ahead and do that. And as for these round toppings, we can have the lightest brown color. I'm going to increase my brush size. Okay, so that's looking nice. And then for the final one, we've got sprinkles here. So once again, go ahead and paint in some with the red color. And I've got a brush size of around 6%, so when pressed on the screen, you'll get this lovely shape, consistent size of sprinkles, which is kind of essential, I feel. It'll look a bit weird if you don't have consistent sized sprinkles. So go ahead and paint them in. And then once you're happy with all of these, you can throw in as many colors as you want, really, but I'm going to use just two. So I've used the red and I'm going to use the lightest brown color as well for the remaining ones. Alright, so that's looking lovely. We've got all of our flat colors in now, guys. That's lovely. We are now just going to go ahead and create a new layer right at the bottom. This one doesn't want to move. Okay, so we're going to place it right here below the lid layer. So it's basically going to have our background. And for the background, we're going to use our purple color in the first row. Go ahead and fill it in, and voila, all of our chocolates and the entire box and everything is popping out so much because of the background. Great job, guys. So next thing that we're going to be starting work on is the box. So let's go ahead and create a new clipping mask to our front box layer now. And we're going to change the blend mode to add. So add's going to help us give a really nice lighter version of this pink color, which we will use. So it really kind of helps us to create more variations of colors, basically. All these blend modes help us to do that when we're using just a limited color palette, and we can create even more colors with that. So yeah, we've still got the technical pen brush for it. That's great. Let's go ahead and just paint in the top edge only. And then fill it in. And then we're going to do the same here. And fill this one too. So we've got a nice top edge which is quite white at the moment. We're going to reduce the opacity of this one down to about 20% to make it a light pink, basically. Alright, so that's looking very nice. And now we're going to go ahead and create some shadows on the vertical edge of this box right here, okay? Now, to make sure that we don't encroach upon the highlighted part, the highlighted top part, we're going to create firstly a new clipping mask right below the add layer. Change the blend mode of this one to multiply. This will be our shadow layer. And then we're going to go back to our add layer, tap on it, tap select. So we've selected this, the contents on this layer basically. And we're going to tap on invert here. So this means now that whatever has been drawn on this layer, which was this nice top surface, has been excluded from whatever else we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to reopen the layer section And we're going to go back to our multiply layer now. All right. And then in the brushes section, we can go back to soft airbrush. Well, not go back to, this is the first time we're using it. So go to the soft airbrush and we're going to paint in a beautiful shadow right here, like this. Okay, that's looking good. And we're going to reduce the opacity of this layer down to about 80%. And you can see that because we have excluded the highlighted part, it's really helping us to not touch upon the top surface in a way. All right, we're going to select the soft airbrush as the smudge tool now. And let's go ahead and just blend in this edge. It's got a nice smooth edge here. And that's looking good. Okay, great stuff. Now we're going to create a bit of a texture here on this vertical surface. And the way to do that is to create a new layer right above our multiply layer here. And then we're going to change the blend mode to color burn this time. This is going to give us a very vibrant kind of a color. Now for our texture, we're going to go to textures and we're going to be using the Tarkine brush. Now I don't know how you pronounce this. Is it Tarkine or is it Tarkine? Whatever. But we're going to use that brush. Now I've got a brush size of around 28% and I think that works. All we're going to do is position this canvas in a way that the lines that are forming are vertical. Because this brush is stamp brush, basically, it does not orient itself to the, well, sorry, it orients itself to the direction of the canvas sometimes. Okay, well, those are the characteristics of this brush. Obviously they can all be altered, but let's make use of what is present natively right now in Procreate. So I have just positioned it like this, and I think what really works is if you have the surface of your box or whatever you're trying to paint it on vertical over here, like in, you know, like as a perpendicular sort of a thing, the Tarkine brush will be able to stamp you a nice vertical sort of a texture here. Okay, but still you can see that it's looking a little weird here, isn't it? It's looking a little too let's say they're converging on the upper surface, whereas I want them to converge on the lower one. So the way that we can do that now is to go on this transform tool. Okay, sorry, we don't want that. I'm going to reduce the canvas size a bit. And we can now go to warp. Okay, if you go on warp, you get this beautiful grid out here now. At any point of these lines, you can absolutely change the direction that you want this to go in. Okay, for example, you can see here it's going nicely in this direction, but I kind of want these to be spread out as well, so I'm going to move this in that direction. You can see that it's going to take a little bit of experimenting at your end as well to see in which direction is it working best for you. But I think this is looking good when everything is sort of spreading apart rather than going to the top like that. Okay, maybe reduce this here as well. Yeah, that's working. And do the same for this here. So what I intend to actually do here is to try and see that the lines forming in this brush are kind of parallel to the ends. So this is looking parallel to, whoops, this end here, the right side, and the left side is looking parallel to the left end of the box. So as long as you have something like that, we're good to go. All right, and then I'm going to just tap out of this selection, but you can see that it's now, because of our arrangement and alignment and everything, it's now encroached on this highlighted top surface. So we're going to go ahead and erase this. And a quick way to do that is also go back on your add layer, select it once more, and go back to your texture layer now. Okay, tap on that and tap clear. So everything gets erased automatically. All right, so that's a great little trick that we've got here for Procreate. Yeah, you don't have to go around erasing everything manually. Perfect, so the front part of the box is done. We've got a beautiful texture there, and we can now go ahead and group our front box layers together. Rename this as front box. No, not front ox. Front box. Beautiful. So now we can go ahead and start off with the back one. So let's go ahead and create a new clipping mask above the to the base back layer here for the box. So we're going to change the blend mode of this new layer to add again, and once more we're reducing the opacity down to 20% because we're going to be painting in these top edges just like we did for the front box. Alright, so to do that, once more we need our technical pen brush, and let's get started. We know it's going to be 20% opacity because that's what we used for the other section, and we kind of want to maintain the same color because it's going to join the front box part as well right here, so it has to be the same shade. So it's a 20% opacity. Okay, and that's looking lovely. Alright, so once again we're going to use the same technique of selecting our add layer, tapping invert to remove it now, and then we're going to create a new clipping mask below the add layer, change the blend mode to multiply, and we're going to use our soft airbrush and the same paint color as we've been using so far, and just go ahead and paint in this section here. As a bit of a shadow. And we're going to erase this part here as well. And we're going to intentionally place in some of the shadows that could be forming because of the chocolates. Okay, and then go ahead and use your smudge tool to just lightly smudge the shadow of some of these. Just the outlines, not the entire thing. And yeah, and also obviously the edge that we already got here. So that's one part of the box. We're going to repeat this step now. So create a new clipping mask above our multiply layer. Change this one's color blend mode to color burn. And we're going to paint in this beautiful bright pink color that now turns out because of color burn right here on just this curve area of the box. Now that's a bit too bright and dark, so we're going to go ahead and reduce the opacity of this layer down to about 35%. And go ahead and apply some Gaussian blur to this now. So Gaussian blur is here in adjustments in the magic wand. Tap on Gaussian blur and go ahead and apply just about a 5 or a 6% Gaussian blur, and I think that's looking good. And you can go ahead and also blend in some of the shadows manually. Okay, so that's great. At this point you can also paint in a bit of a shadow for some of the chocolates that are here against the box as well. So there's not much, to be honest, it's just a few of them. So just like that. Okay, looking good. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of a texture, and then we are done with this back box section as well. So for this texture, we're going to create a new clipping mask right above the base layer. And then we're going to change the blend mode this time to add. So it's going to be a sparkly kind of a box interior. And to achieve that effect, we're going to be using the 2B compressed brush in charcoals. Alright, I've got a brush size of around 16%, and with the same pink color, go ahead and paint in just a little bit of texture, very gently, don't go overboard with this. That's it, and remember we've still got our selection entirely on for the top part. We want none of these effects to be going on to the top section, that's why. Alright, now you can remove your selection, and that's looking good. But I would reduce the opacity of this layer to around 50% or so, depending on whether you can actually see the glitter effect or not. For me, I want it to be there just barely visible, so I like it at 50%. If you want a brighter version, go ahead and keep it at a higher opacity, and that should be fine. Alright, so I think we're done with the back box. So we're grouping our back box layers together, and then rename this as back box. Wonderful. We're going to start working on the slots now, right? Now we're going to be making use of a lot of, well, not a lot, it's almost the same steps to be honest. But once again, create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and we're going to be repeating the same step of adding the top highlight layer here for all of these top surfaces. I think it's very clear which areas are the top surfaces in all of these slots. So the thinner edges that you see, the horizontal ones, those are meant to be the top edges. So I'm going back to my technical pen brush, and I'm going to use the same color as the slots, which is the third color in the first row. We're going to go ahead and paint in these slots. Now that looks very pink, doesn't it? So we're going to reduce this one's opacity down to about 60%. Yeah, so that's looking nice, giving it a nice edge as well. I like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and paint in all of these edges, including the ones here that are lengthwise as well. So you can see now it's looking like, yeah, they're looking like slots, definitely, with a brighter, lighter horizontal edge on the top. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and paint all of these, slightly speed up the video, and I will see you once it's all done. Okay, so these are already, as you can see, looking lovely. We can already make out a lot of form with the slots now just because of these highlights. So yeah, next step would be to add in a bit more shadows here now to distinguish each slot from the other even more. So to do that, we're going to create a new clipping mask below our add layer, so right above the base. Are we going to change the blend mode to multiply? Oh, and once again, we're going to select our add layer, so the highlight layer, select it, and then tap invert so that our shadows do not reach this highlight layer. So go back to your multiply layer now, and then what we're going to do now is everything on the upper edge will be in shadows. So by that I mean that literally all of these edges here, for example, they will be all in shadow. So that's too much. There you go. Let's see. Okay. Better. And then we're just going to reduce the opacity of this one down to about 50% so that it doesn't look that dark. But here's how we're going to distinguish it from the vertical edges. So if we just paint in our shadows on these upper surfaces of each of these slots, for example in this one here as well, it's going to help distinguish this face of the cubicle from the other one, isn't it? So that's how we're going to do this. So everything which is on the upper surface will be in shadows. So let's go ahead and paint them in. Alright, so I've removed the selection now, and there you go. You can see that it's made such a difference already. We have all of our layers here together. I can remove the sketch layer, and even without the sketch, you can finally see all of our slots individually present here, only because of these highlights and shadows. Isn't that great? Alright, so we just need to add in a bit more texture to our shadow layers here. And one more thing that we can also do is create a new clipping mask above our add layer and change the blend mode to multiply. And we're going to use our soft airbrush with the same color that we had so far. We're just going to paint in some shadows for these chocolates which were right here. Okay, I think those are enough really. We don't even need this one, to be honest. So I'm going to erase this. But yeah, that's looking nice. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer now, down to about 50%. And that's looking great. We've got some shadows of all of the chocolates here, whichever one was leaning against the box and needed one. Great. It's time to add in a little bit of texture now. So right above the base, let's create a new clipping mask. Change the blend mode this time to color dodge. And we're going to use, in textures, the Signet brush to give it a beautiful spotted kind of a texture. And we're going to use the same color that we have so far for the slots. Go ahead and paint in this texture. Don't press too hard on the surface, we just need a light texture. And we'll reduce the opacity down. I'm reducing mine down to about 70%, and I think that's looking good. Okay, wonderful. So we are done with the slots here as well. I'm going to group all of our layers together and then rename the group as slots. Excellent. So we are done with this section, guys, and then we can move on to the lid now. So let's get started with that one. We need our sketch layer to be turned back on, and we're creating a new clipping mask to the base lid layer, and then change the blend mode to multiply. And I'm going to select the same pink color, the darker pink color, as the lid. And we're going to go to the soft airbrush. Now, we can see that the main box and the lid are at like a, I don't know, 30, 45 or yeah, around 45-60 degree angle. So they're going to be casting, the top box is going to be casting a shadow on the lid, starting from its edge here. And you can imagine that it's going to go up to somewhere around this point here. So go ahead, close your shape and fill it in. That will be your shadow for this lid, for one. We've got another shadow as this vertical edge. So we're going to be painting that in as well. And then remember to close your shape and fill it in. Okay, and now we'll reduce the opacity of this layer down to about 60%. And that's looking nice. Okay, we are going to use the smudge tool, the soft airbrush, and then very lightly, I've got a brush size of around 20%, very gently just apply a little bit of blur to the edge of the shadow there. And I'd say you can do the same for the lid here as well, but just a light one. Don't go overboard with this. We still want to maintain the vertical edge crispness a bit. We don't want it to get blurred out too much. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, that's great. Now we're creating a new clipping mask above our multiply shadow layer, and then changing the blend mode to add for our highlights. And we're going to be painting our highlights just on this edge here. So let's go ahead and paint in with the soft airbrush a highlight. So it's a very bright pink right now. We can reduce the opacity of this layer down to about 30%. And then we're going to apply Gaussian blur to this now. So I think we can go ahead and apply about a 5 to 6% Gaussian blur. And that's looking great. Okay, let's turn off the sketch layer and have a look. Yeah, I think that's nice, but we can probably apply a bit more of a blur. So I'd go with another 5% on mine. So maybe that'll be a total of about 8 to 10%. And it looks good. Yeah, okay. Maybe we can also paint in just an edge highlight there as well near the shadows. And then we can manually blend this out too, so that it's not too visible, but it gives a bit more structure to the entire lid here. Maybe we can do the same at the lower edge of the lid as well. Just a very faint line, you don't need to make it too thick. And then remember to blend it as well. So it's a very gentle reflected light, not bold. Okay, so that's looking nice. actually. I'm wondering if I can also do this for the box here as well, so we might as well do that while we're at this. So go to the front box, add layer here. So this was the highlight, the top highlight layer. Because we're not using it anymore, we might as well just go ahead and use it for this now. Just gently place in a highlight near this edge. We're going to apply a little bit of blending to this now. And I think that's making it look even better. Definitely keep this. Yeah. Alright, so let's return to our lid layer now. And we're going to add a little bit of texture with the Toppings brush again. And we're going to create a new clipping mask right above the base. Change the blend mode to color burn. Color burn. And then select the Toppings brush in textures, and once again our task is to make sure that I'm going to reduce the brush size a bit, about 8 to 10%, even more, 4% maybe. So yeah, the task is to make sure that this remains vertical, perpendicular I mean, to the Toppings brush. So and by this I mean that the canvas remains, sorry, not the canvas, I can't speak today, sorry. I mean this vertical edge of the lid needs to be perpendicular to this Toppings brush stamp. Okay, so once you have something like this in place, we're going to reduce the opacity of this layer down to about 60%. Looking good. And if you feel like you need to change some things, I feel like this one might need a little bit more work, go ahead and do that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, now we're going to use the eraser and just erase the top section so that we have a clean edge of vertically placed Toppings brush texture. So it's kind of like a corrugated texture, isn't it? Yeah, that's looking nice. We're going to repeat the same thing now for the horizontal one on a new layer, so a new clipping mask. Change the blend mode to color burn again and reduce the opacity to about 60% once more. And then we're going to repaint this texture vertically this time. So just orient your canvas in a way that the heart is pointing straight towards you, like this. And then when you paint in the texture, you're going to get a beautiful texture which is running vertically like this across the box. But you'll notice also that this is a bit weird in some of the sections, that it's overlapping here. So once more, what we need to do is select the lower, the vertical edge texture layer, select that, go to the horizontal one right on top, tap on that and tap clear. So we basically just erased all of the ones that were right on top here. Or have we not? We should have done that. Nope, or is it the other way? Select and clear. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and just erase the texture right here. On the vertical edge, so that there's no overlap as such, and you can feel like some of this is just, you know, when it's horizontal and then it's going down into the box. It's like that. Obviously this is not happening here, but I can't take care of everything. It's fine. I'm sure that there's a way to do that here as well, but it's going to take a lot of time. Let's just skip that. We could totally just, you know, make this more vertically edged like that, but I think this is sort of working in a way. If you see that they're all coming along in a way, we're good, don't worry. Let's combine these layers together now, and you've got all of your textures in one beautiful layer now. Excellent job. So I think we can see, let's see, should we make it a bit darker? If we duplicate this a bit, and we can probably, yeah, so we've duplicated the texture layer. If you feel like it's a bit too light, then you can duplicate the texture layer. That's going to make the lid appear darker than the rest of the box. So that's something that you can do. And if you don't like it, you can go ahead and leave it as it is. It's going to look beautiful as it is too. But I've just duplicated it, and I'm going to just reduce the opacity down to about 44% or so. I'm going to combine these two layers together just to have my textures a little darker on the lid. Alright, so once we're done with that, guys, we are done with the back, with the lid of the box. So I'm going to group all of our lid layers together, rename this as lid, and we're good to go. So next thing that we'll be working on would be the ribbon itself, and we'll start off with the bow. So let's get our sketch layer back on, and we'll create a new clipping mask to the bow and change the blend mode to multiply for shadows. We're going to select the same color as the bow, so this beautiful champagne color, and we're going to start painting in our shadows now with the technical pen brush. So that's going to help us give a nice outline, at least where overlapping structures like this bow's knot comes into place, so that we don't have irregular or not very crisp outlines. So go ahead and paint in some of these shadow areas. And this might be a good way to test where you think the shadows would be. Okay, so this is the first layer of shadows basically. We'll be making another layer for deeper shadows in a bit, but we're going to reduce the opacity of this layer now down to about 50%. And you can pause the screen here and have a look. This is where I've painted the shadows. We're now going to go ahead and blend these now. So with the soft airbrush again, just the edges which are not part of the outline can now be blended in. Alright, so that's looking nice. We've got our shadows here already. We're going to paint in some deeper shadows now. So create a new clipping mask above your main shadow layer. Change the blend mode to multiply. And then we'll paint in just some deeper shadows, only in the areas that are close to the knot. So this will help to distinguish the knot from the rest of the bow as well. Okay. And now we can go ahead and blend the outer edges. And you can also probably just add in a little bit near the knot, just a tiny bit, not too much, because remember we need to use this layer just to distinguish the rest of the bow from the knot itself. So what will help us would be to turn off our sketch layer and have a look if that's working in the first place, and I think it is. Alright, so that's looking great. Next we're going to go ahead and add in some highlights to make our ribbon shine a lot. It's going to be like a satin kind of a ribbon. So create a new clipping mask on top of your multiply layers. Change the blend mode to add. And then I'm going to use the same technical pen brush and go ahead and paint in areas of highlights. Some of these areas might even just overlap with the shadows too. It's going to produce an interesting effect. Okay, so that's looking good. And then just one for the knot. And that works too. go ahead and blend these. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer slightly down to about 70% and then blend it away. Now when we blend it, this is when we see this beautiful satin kind of an effect coming through. That's exactly what we want. Just be careful not to blend too much out. You still need to be able to see the whitish shiny effect. Okay, so good, that's looking nice. And for our last step, we are going to add in just some edge highlights for this. So new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and then I'm just going to use the technical pen brush to go ahead and outline the bow. Alright, and once that's done, we'll reduce its opacity to about 35%. And we'll apply a Gaussian blur now. So we can apply a blur of around 2 to 3%. I think 3% looks nice. And we've got a beautiful bow here. It's looking amazing. Okay, so let's move on to the rest of the ribbon now, which is this cross here. So we're going to be working on that. Let's group our bow layers together and rename this as bow, and create a new clipping mask to the cross layer. Change the blend mode to multiply, and we're going to paint in the shadows. So for the shadows, we know that this entire section of the cross is going to be in shadows anyway, because this is the area which is in shadows because of the overlying box. So we're going to paint that in and fill it in. Okay, and then the other areas. So the area underlying this bow here, and then down here as well, and then obviously this one as well, the vertical edge. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's reduce this one's opacity now down to about 50%. It's looking good. We're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of blending now. So you get some soft edges here for the ribbon as it curves over this vertical edge. And we don't need to blend those. Alright, one thing I've noticed, I haven't really done an outline here for the bow, which is why we can see that there's not much to distinguish the bow from the underlying cross. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of a highlight back on the edge layer here, as you can see. If you've already done that in your step, that's great. I'm just touching up mine. Right, so that's looking good. Okay, let's go back to our cross layer now. Yeah, we've got one layer of shadows. We need a deeper layer again. So create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to multiply, and then again with the same color, same champagne color, we're going to be painting in some deeper shadows, and those will be basically of this label, for example. We have to create a shadow over here as well on the box for the label, which we will do in a minute. And then just add some of this here. Okay, let's go ahead and blend these. Just gently so that they don't lose the shape, because if they lose the shape they're not going to look like the objects overlying them are that close. I think this is good. Okay, great. And we're going to reduce this one's opacity as well down to about 40% or even more. If you blended them out too much already, then you might need to give them a bit more. I think about 75% is nice. Yeah, great. Okay, it's time to add in our highlights now. So create a new clipping mask above, change the blend mode to add, and we're going to go ahead and create some highlights. So let's see. We'll need some highlights here at the edge. And I think that's probably the only area that really needs a highlight. So let's reduce this one's opacity down to 70%. And we're going to blend. So that's looking beautiful. Nice. Now we're going to create one last clipping mask for the edge highlights for the ribbons. So create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and with the technical pen brush, go ahead and outline these ribbons. So we want very thin strips, we don't want them to be too thick. Right, now let's reduce this one's opacity to about 35%, and we're going to apply a Gaussian blur. And you can see it's looking like a proper ribbon now, doesn't it? That it's got an edge that shines just like in real ribbons. And I've done a Gaussian blur of about 3%. Now it's looking great. Okay, the only thing I just want to add a little bit of a highlight here to distinguish the bow from the cross there. So I'm just going back to my cross layers and then to the edge layer there. That looks better. Let's blend. Yeah, happy with that. Okay, let's group our cross layers together, and we have finished with the lid here as well. Just going to rename this as cross. Looks great. Before we finish off with the lid, I think we just need to add a bit of a shadow. So select your first paint color in the second row, and we're going to paint in a little shadow of this label, and then just blend it. Not too much. Or you can just apply some Gaussian blur to it, that'll do the trick too. That's looking nice. And then you can also add in a little shadow of the ribbons that are underlying these two. I think we might need a separate layer because it's the same color now, isn't it? It's alright, we'll create one. Go ahead and blend this gently, don't lose the shape. Every shadow counts, trust me. Okay, you can create a quick one. Let's create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to multiply, and reduce its opacity down to 60%, and then go ahead and apply, create a shadow for the string there. That's looking good. Then we'll need one for this ribbon here off the vertical edge. Okay, I think that's good. I mean, we can go ahead and add in a whole lot more here as well, but don't need to do anything more than this really. Alright, so that's looking great. We have completed the lid, guys. Excellent job. We are next going to work on the label itself. So let's turn our sketch layer back on, and you can see that we've got this lettering here on our label. Obviously, feel free to change the words or whatever you want. I wanted to make it a bit more of a fantasy themed chocolate, so charm chocolates we have. So I'm going to create a new clipping mask to the label, and then with the technical pen brush, we are going to use this slot purple mauve color, and I've got a brush size of around 9%. No, that's too thick. Let's see what works. I think 5% brush size works, and I'm just going to go ahead and create this border. And then letter this. Okay, so this is looking good. Now let's add a little bit of texture to this. So create a new clipping mask above the base, and then we're going to change the blend mode to multiply and use the same color as the label. And for the brush, we'll use the Signet brush in textures. Okay, I've got a brush size of around 12%. Go ahead and paint in a gentle texture. That's nice. Gives it a nice papery kind of a look. And we're going to create a new clipping mask now for some quick shadows on top of the lettering. So change the blend mode to multiply. Go back to your soft airbrush, and with the same color as the label, we're going to paint in a bit of a shadow. So this has to coincide with the shadow of the lid, of the box. It's looking good. We can go ahead and just gently blend in this inner side. And then we can reduce this one's opacity down to about 70%. And create one more layer just for a quick highlight. Change the blend mode to add, and then paint in just a slight highlight here at this corner and around the edge, slightly, and go ahead and blend this. Before we blend it, let's reduce this one's opacity down to about 15%, because we really don't want the paper to be shining too much. So as you can see, most of it's already been reduced, so you don't really have to blend in anything. Happy with this as it is. Okay, so the label is done. Good job. Let's group all of these together. Rename this as label. And then we've only got one clipping mask for the string. So create a new one, change the blend mode to multiply. And we're going to use the string color, which is the second color in the first row. And all we're going to do with the soft airbrush is paint in a little shadow on the lower aspect of the string. And then reduce its opacity down to about 70%. And that's it. So we're done with the string as well, so you can group that too. It's a very quick one. Excellent. And we are done with all of this. If we turn off the sketch layer, you'll see that because of the shadows and highlights, we've had so much distinguishing going on between all of the structures here. And we can finally move on to the chocolates, the main stars of this illustration. So let's turn our sketch layer back on, and we'll start off with the lower section, or the back chocolates first. And I'm going to reduce the opacity of our front chocolates so we don't get confused with them, and their toppings as well, so we know exactly which ones we're working on right now. So create a new clipping mask to the back chocolates layer, and then change the blend mode to multiply. And now let's get started. So we're going to use the same color as each chocolate for the shadows and the highlights, so it totally depends on your chocolate colors as well. If you've changed them, if you've not used the same ones as I have, that's completely fine. Just use the base of whatever chocolate color you've used for the shadows and the highlights. Alright, so let's get started. Now I've still got my soft airbrush, and for this I'm just going to create something like this here for the shadows. Fill it in. I think that's a bit too dark, so I'm going to reduce this one's opacity down to about 70%. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and start blending these at the same time. So just like we've done for all of the others, we're going to blend just this outer edge so that we have a crisp outline here. Okay, so that's looking nice. Great. Let's also add in shadows of the toppings on the same layer. Okay, so that's looking good. All right, let's move on to the next one then. We can work on this one here. So maybe a shadow like this, then blend looking good. I'll start with the fingers here now. Okay, so these have been made, and I forgot to add in the shadows of these toppings here as well. So go ahead and add them if you forgot them too, along with me. But we're just adding in slight shadows, as you can see. From the toppings, because they're not very thick toppings, are they? So they're not expected to cast huge shadows. Okay, so that's good. And then we can also add in shadows for the hearts. Just slight ones. I don't think these chocolate ones really need them because they're so thin. There's barely going to be any shadows there, so that's fine. Okay, so let's work on this chocolate here now. For this one, we can add a shadow to the lower surface, definitely, and then add in some thicker shadows here. I think we can also just have a foam shadow along the same. And then go ahead and just blend in these. Okay, and then I'm going to use the medium brown color now, just to paint in a deeper shadow here in the center. So it kind of gives the effect that there's like a concave surface inside, or at least a bit of a color variation, and that makes it look nice. Very gently blend that in. I think that looks good. Okay, let's move on to just adding in a very slight, with the same darker medium brown color, just a slight line in the center to accentuate this depth, so that it kind of gives the effect that there are, it's like a scallop kind of an effect. Okay, and then we can try and just blend this even further. And you can always go back to the original color and rebuild on the outline there. Okay, let's move on to the others. So I've got this beautiful hexagonal one, and we're going to paint in a shadow for that. I'm going to bring back my sketch layer. So we need a shadow on the vertical edge. And that's great. Don't really need to do much for this, because once again the overlying chocolates lines are very thin, so if you want you can go ahead and add in a very slim shadow. That's it. Okay, that's looking good. And then we can do something about this spherical one, so we need the right color, which is the medium brown. Go ahead and paint in something like that. And then we're going to blend it. Make sure you erase that shadow if you blend it into the adjacent chocolate. I think that's enough of a shadow for the spherical one. We are back to the heart now, so go ahead and paint in the shadow for the vertical edge. Okay, and you can place in some tiny shadows of the sprinkles. Don't need to go overboard at this, just slight ones, and that's fine. And now let's move on to this triangular one. Once again, vertical edge, paint it in. And then we need a very gentle blend right at the top. Okay, so that's looking good. So we've got shadows for all of our chocolates here on this layer. That's great. Let's add in some highlights now. So we'll create a new clipping mask and then change the blend mode this time to add for our highlights. Let's get started with them. So we'll start off with this elliptical one. And for this, select the color of the chocolate. And we'll create something like this here. Fill it in. So we've got somewhat of this shape here. Okay, and now you can go ahead and blend it. Once again, before we blend, let's reduce the opacity. I think we can reduce it down to about 75%. Let's start blending. Okay, so that's great. Let's move on to the next one, which would be this finger, chocolate finger. You can just add a shadow, a highlight like this. And go ahead and blend. Let's add highlights to all the fingers now. Okay, so that's looking great. Let's move on to these hearts now. So for the hearts, we can just paint in some lines like these and then just go ahead and blend them. It's like a smiley face, isn't it? Now what we're going to do is just connect these into a V shape. And just blend. Now you can make this as reflective and shiny as you want. I don't want to make it too shiny, so Just going to leave it like this. I think this is a nice, gentle highlight. Also, I would add a little bit of a highlight to the lower edge of this. Just a soft one, not too much. So that it gives it a bit more of a direct look. So that it gives it a bit more of a 3D effect. Yeah, that's great. Let's do the same thing for this one here in the box itself. Okay, and I think that should be enough for this. Let's move on to maybe this one, the spherical one. So select that and then just create a little bit of a circle there. And we're going to blend this out. This one's an easy one. Okay, and then for the hexagonal one, you can go ahead and paint in just here at the edge and then blend. Okay. And then do the same for the triangular one as well. And maybe I can push it out here as well, just at the edge. And then let's do the same for the edge here for these small chocolates and the red one too. Okay, so I think we've got highlights for most of them now. It's just this scalloped one that's left. So select the color, the base color, and then go ahead and add in your highlights here. And then we're also going to, go ahead and erase this shadow here on this white area. And I'm going to add a little highlight to this too. Okay, so that's great, and I think we can do just an edge highlight here as well. So with the same base color, maybe if we just place in an edge highlight here. Great. Okay, so we are done with this section. Now we're going to go ahead and create some shadows and highlights. Well, no, I think we can add in a few more highlights. Just bear with me for a second. Create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and just to distinguish the edges of some of them, because if I remove the sketch, as you can see, you can't really tell where the edge is for some of the chocolates. So these will need a few more little tinkering about a little bit more. So turn on your sketch layer and go ahead and with the same color as the base again, just paint in a little outline like that with the technical pen brush. Okay, something of that sort. So have a look and see where do you think it might be needed in your chocolates. I think there, maybe in this hexagonal one, that would look nice. And then also here. Maybe we can also add Alright, now we're going to reduce the opacity down to about 50%. And let's apply some Gaussian blur to this now. So I would say just about 1 to 2%. That would be good. And for some of these, for example, the white chocolate hearts, we can manually blend them ourselves. Okay, so this is great. We've got all of our highlights here, and that's done. Excellent. So let's group our back chocolates layers together. Rename this group as back chocolates. Great. Let's work on their toppings next. So we'll create a new clipping mask to these, and then change the blend mode to multiply for their shadows. And then let's start one by one. So for the green one, again, so I'm using, I think I can go ahead and use the soft airbrush. It's just going to help with blending a whole lot more. So paint in your shadows. Okay, that's great. Let's continue with the rest of them too. So again, we're using the base colors or whatever base color is of the topping, so just using that. And then give it a quick blend. So when you reach this squiggly bit here for the spherical one, a trick that I would suggest for this is to just go ahead and add in shadows to whichever area you think is on the lower side. So as you can see, I'm adding in shadows only to the lower side and to the most prominent ones. So I'm not doing the entire lower side like that, as you can see. So everything that is just horizontally lower and visible, or something similar. Okay, and then you can choose whichever ones you want to put on the top. They can have, if you put shadows beside the strand, it'll look like this strand is on top of the one that is below, like the horizontal one. So yeah, go ahead and play around with that too, and see whichever ones you want to add in as the top ones. I think this works. Yeah, okay. Alright, so we've got all of our shadows here. I think that's fine. Great, let's move on to highlights now. So create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and let's get started with our highlights. So we've still got the soft airbrush. Let's paint in some highlights and blend. Okay, so this is looking good. We've added in all of the highlights. I've just noticed I haven't added the shadows of these toppings onto the chocolates, for both of these chocolates. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I will see you once I'm done with those. Okay, so that's looking good. Added in all of these shadows, and that's great. Okay, so one last thing to do for toppings is to create one last clipping mask, change the blend mode to multiply, and you can see that some of these toppings are also in the layer of shadows. So to compensate for that, we're going to go ahead and paint in, just on this layer, their corresponding shadows. Okay, whatever areas they are falling in shadows for, we're going to paint in shadows there. So for example, we know that this area is meant to be in shadows. So once again, with the same color as the topping, not the base, we're going to add in some shadows, okay? It won't make a huge difference, but even the slightest bit counts. Okay, so yeah, that's looking great. So we are done with these toppings layers. Group them. I can just say back toppings. Excellent. So we're left with only 4 more chocolates and we are done with this illustration then. So let's go ahead and create a new clipping mask for our 4 extra chocolates, and then change the blend mode of this one to multiply, and let's get started. So we need our sketch layer back on. Okay, and I think this looks too dark, so we're going to reduce the opacity to 70%, and that's much better. All right, let's continue. Okay, that's looking good for this white one. And then blend. All right. And then we also need a shadow in this darker section, so that's too thick. Let's reduce the brush size. just a slight one, not too much. And shadow of the topping. I forgot to add shadows there, I'll do that in a second. Let's go ahead and blend this. Right, and then for the red one, red one's pretty simple. Just need to lightly blend this outline, and then we can move on to this darker one. And let's blend this. Let's add in the topping shadow. Okay, that's great. Let's go ahead and add in the highlights now for this. So create a new clipping mask, change the blend mode to add, and let's paint in our highlights. So this is a bit bright, so we're reducing the opacity to 75%. And now blending. Okay, that's great. Then we're going to work on this white one. and then blend. Okay, so that's great. And then for the red one, we're going to paint in just here around the edge. A bit of a crescent like this. And then we can also add a little bit of a reflected light here at the lower edge. Okay, so that's looking nice. And then for our last one, we've got this dark chocolate one. You can paint in a little texture like that, sorry, a little highlight like that. It's a bit too much. Yeah, let's blend. Okay, so that's looking great. Alright, so now we can just group our layers together. Rename this group as Front Chocolates. And we are left with just the toppings that we need quick shadows and highlights for. So create a new clipping mask for that and change the blend mode to multiply. And then remember, we also have these sprinkles here, okay? So don't forget to work on those as well. We'll work on them one by one. Okay, so for our toppings here, just add some quick shadows on the lower edges of the hearts and then blend. I'm going to do the same thing for these little dots. Okay, and then we've also got the sprinkles. Alright, so we've added in all of these shadows, that's great. For our last step, for our toppings, we're creating some highlights. So create a new clipping mask and change the blend mode to add. Let's work on our highlights now. So that's the hearts, and we're going to add just little dots to these little balls, the sprinkle balls, and blend. Right, so those are done. Okay, so those are all of these topping highlights done as well. And that's it. I think we're done with this. That's great. So let's group our front toppings layers together. And yeah, so our chocolates are all done as well, and we are left with just 3 last steps to bring this whole illustration a whole lot more depth and color. So to do that, we're going to work on the background. So let's go ahead and create a new layer above the background layer and select in airbrushing the soft brush. So the soft brush is basically just a bigger version of the soft airbrush which we've been using so far. And what we need to do is just select the red color and make sure that the blend mode of this layer is changed to add. And we're going to paint a beautiful elliptical glow over here. You can move this so that it's right in the center, and then apply a Gaussian blur. So it totally depends on how big you want to make this ellipse. I think we can go ahead even more. Alright, let's apply Gaussian blur. So anywhere around 35 to 36%. Well, it really depends on how big your glow is. So just follow your own best sense of judgment to see how much of blurring you really need. But I think this is giving it a nice gradient. Let's enhance the gradient even more now with just one more layer, and then change the blend mode of this one to multiply. And with the same red color, we're going to give it a bit more of a shadowy kind of an effect. So just around the box, don't go too far beyond the box really, because it's going to become too dark, then it won't look nice. But just here centrally, and then apply your Gaussian blur again. I think for me about a 20% looks nice. There's a whole lot more depth to this now, and it looks really like it's popping out so much, isn't it? Excellent. And for the last step of this illustration, we're going to create one more layer above our background layers, and then we're going to change the blend mode to add. Select in luminance the light pen brush, and with the red color basically go ahead and paint in some little glows. So I've got a brush size of around 11%. Feel free to change it however you want and paint in your glows wherever you want. This is just going to give it a whole lot more fantasy kind of a vibe, make it look a whole lot more magical. And yeah, that's what we're here for, isn't it? Alright, so that's looking beautiful, and yeah, I think we've got enough glows going on in there. Amazing, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. I hope you've had fun drawing these beautiful chocolates, all these charmed chocolates, and yeah, thank you so much for being here. So guys, if you'd like to share your creation with me online, remember to tag me in your post on Instagram. I absolutely love seeing your versions of the tutorials and sharing them on my page. And make sure to subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this tutorial too. And don't forget to check out my other videos. I've got so many more magical projects waiting for you. New tutorials come out every 2 weeks on my channel, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.